With the beginning of the Jeju Island arc, Jinwoo had just accomplished the impossible. He cured his mother's eternal sleep. The moment she opened her eyes, the news spread like wildfire through the hospital corridors. Doctors and nurses scrambled, unable to believe what they were witnessing. One junior doctor, overwhelmed with shock, rushed to his senior, struggling to put his thoughts into words. The senior doctor, upon hearing the news, was in sheer disbelief. A patient who had been in the eternal sleep for 4 years, waking up without any medical intervention? It defied all logic. But what stunned him even more was the guardian's demand, a discharge request, effective immediately. "That's impossible," the senior doctor muttered, shaking his head. The junior doctor hesitated before handing over the latest reports. Her test results came back normal, and she's walking just fine. The senior doctor gritted his teeth. This was unprecedented. If he could keep the patient under observation, their hospital would gain worldwide recognition. He couldn't let go of such an extraordinary case so easily. However, just as he was about to argue, the junior doctor added hesitantly, "Sir, the patient's guardian is Sung Jinwoo, the 10th S-rank hunter of South Korea." The senior doctor froze. His ambition crumbled instantly. Without another word, he abandoned any plans of keeping the patient under observation. Back in the hospital room, Gina clung to her mother, sobbing uncontrollably. After 4 long years, she was finally awake. The overwhelming flood of emotions left her unable to hold back her tears. Meanwhile, Jinwoo stood silently, watching the scene unfold. A faint smile tugged at his lips. He had done it. He had saved his mother. But beneath that moment of triumph, a shadow of uncertainty loomed. His hands clenched at his sides. "I finally did it." Yet deep down, he knew there was no turning back now. The path he had chosen as a hunter had taken him past the point of no return. The scene shifts as Jinwoo checks his phone, his body still aching from clearing the demon's castle after what felt like an eternity. Notifications flooded his screen, countless missed calls and online discussions buzzing about a dragon-like creature spotted in the sky. His eyes narrowed. Fortunately, no one had seen him riding on top of Kaisel. If they had, explaining it would have been a nightmare. Just then, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, an unknown number. Answering it, a familiar voice greeted him. "It's me, Go Gun-hee!" Jinwoo immediately tensed. The association president wasn't someone who called for small talk. "Did you watch the news?" Go Gun-hee asked. Jinwoo's mind raced. Did they find out? His heart sank as he recalled his late-night flight with Kaisel. Had someone managed to capture proof? He quickly apologized. "I'll be more careful next time." A pause. "Then, what?" Go Gun-hee sounded genuinely confused. Jinwoo thought, "Wait, this isn't about Kaisel?" Clearing his throat, he quickly explained, "I just got back from a place with no signal." Go Gun-hee exhaled. "Looks like you really haven't heard the news. I'll come to you and explain everything." Jinwoo's expression darkened. If the association had caught wind of his mother waking up from an incurable state, things could get complicated. He couldn't risk that, so he insisted to go there instead. At the association headquarters, Go Gun-hee leaned forward, his expression serious yet eager. "Our next move is clear. We're heading to Jeju Island to eliminate those ants once and for all." A rare glint of excitement flickered in his eyes. "Finally, some action for us." Then, his gaze locked onto Jinwoo. "This mission is impossible without you. Will you help us?" Jinwoo remained silent, contemplating his answer. Normally, he wouldn't hesitate. The thrill of battling powerful monsters was something he lived for. But this time, things were different. His mother had just woken up. After years of waiting, should he really leave her side so soon? Lost in thought, his instincts suddenly flared. His head snapped to the side. What was that just now? A surge of magical energy pulsed through the air. It wasn't far from here. Could it be a dungeon break? Did something happen? Go Gun-hee, who had already stood up to bid him farewell, paused at the doorway. He turned back, noticing Jinwoo's sharp gaze locked in the distance. "Well," Jinwoo murmured, "I don't think it's anything serious, but it seems like hunters are fighting each other nearby. The direction you're looking in? If I'm not mistaken, rank S hunters are doing some light exercises in the gymnasium." His eyes betraying a hint of undisguised surprise. He can sense that from this distance? The association's gymnasium was built specifically to suppress magical energy leakage. Even he, a seasoned ranks hunter, couldn't pick up on anything from here. Yet Jinwoo not only detected the faint traces that slipped through, but also identified that multiple magic energies were clashing against each other. "If you're interested, would you like to take a look?" Go Gun-hee's voice carried a rare note of excitement. It wasn't often that all of South Korea's ranks hunters gathered in one place. Witnessing their abilities firsthand would be invaluable, especially for Jinwoo, who had only recently joined their ranks. I believe Mr. Goto Ryuji is also present. Jinwoo had been considering the offer with mild curiosity, but at that name, he paused. You mean that Goto Ryuji? Gun-hee nodded. Yes, him. It was a name known far beyond the hunter community, one belonging to one of the most powerful hunters in existence. Even ordinary civilians had heard of him. He's currently in the country to strengthen ties between Korean and Japanese hunters, building camaraderie ahead of the Jeju Island raid. Since he's leaving tomorrow, if you don't meet him today, you may not get another opportunity. South Korea's best hunters were already gathered, and now Japan's strongest was here as well. Jinwoo's lips curled slightly. Obviously, I can't miss this chance. His earlier hesitation vanished as he met Go Gun-hee's gaze, his interest now fully piqued. I'll take a look. At the same time, Goto Ryuji fought back the urge to yawn. This is supposed to be Korea's best? How laughable. No, more than laughable. It was pitiful. The first thought came from an objective evaluation. The second was laced with a trace of sympathy. Rather than entrusting this country's safety to these hunters, wouldn't it be far wiser for them to be under Japan's protection instead? A subtle smirk formed on Goto Ryuji's lips as he scanned the room, surveying the so-called elite of South Korea. Among them, only one stood out as even remotely useful. Cha Hyen, wasn't it? Even then, her abilities merely placed her among Japan's upper-rank hunters, not anywhere close to their true best. Their strongest awakened, ironically, was an old man nearing the end of his days. If it were Go Gun-hee in his prime, perhaps he could stand on equal footing with some of our best. But even that's a stretch. Regardless, his assessment was complete. He had accomplished the real reason for his extended stay in Korea. If we were to withdraw during the subjugation, they wouldn't even last 5 minutes. With that thought, Goto Ryuji turned on his heel, prepared to leave. But then, his sharp eyes caught sight of an unfamiliar figure entering the gymnasium. Even now, looking at him with his own eyes, Goto Ryuji couldn't sense him at all. An assassin-type hunter? Narrowing his eyes, Goto turned to the association employee beside him, the one responsible for translation. Who is that man? After a brief moment, recognition dawned. Ah, that's the newly registered rank S hunter. So that was the infamous reawakened hunter, the one with no reliable information available. Originally, Goto had planned to spend the rest of his time in Korea gathering intelligence on this man. Seems like he's a pretty excellent assassin then? Pardon? Oh no, not at all, the employee replied quickly. It's just that. He's actually a mage-type hunter, Mr. Goto. For a brief second, Goto Ryuji's mind blanked. His expression darkened in disbelief. He's really a mage type? Goto Ryuji's shock deepened. He quickly raised his head, only to realize that man was already standing close. So this is Goto Ryuji, huh? Jinwoo needed just one glance to recognize Japan's strongest hunter. A tall man, dressed sharply, his beard neatly trimmed. But what caught Jinwoo's attention wasn't his appearance. Why is he staring at me like that? Goto's eyes were fixed on him, unreadable yet unwavering. It was starting to get annoying. Just as Jinwoo's irritation began to rise, the Japanese hunter finally acknowledged him with a slight nod, a subtle greeting through his gaze. Did he stare like that because we've never met before? Jinwoo dismissed the thought, returning the nod before shifting his focus elsewhere. In the center of the gymnasium, Baek Yoonho, shirtless and radiating power, was locked in a sparring match with a hulking middle-aged man. The two clashed fiercely, their movements sharp and precise. Everyone present, aside from Goto Ryuji, watched with keen interest. Baek Yoonho reacted swiftly, slapping away his opponent's incoming strike. With a smooth twist of his hips, he launched a devastating low kick. The impact echoed through the gym. Yet, contrary to expectations, the one who frowned in discomfort wasn't his opponent. It was Baek Yoonho. Jinwoo immediately understood why. In the briefest moment, the giant man had activated a body reinforcement skill, hardening his legs against the strike. A tanker, no doubt. Was this just the standard for rank hunters? The middle-aged giant smirked. Instructor Baek, a young man like you shouldn't be this powerless. Ma Dongwook let out a hearty chuckle, adjusting the belt of his dobok. Given his sheer bulk, closer to a sumo wrestler than a martial artist, the traditional uniform looked somewhat out of place. Well then? After a quick readjustment, he lunged again. Baek Yoonho, responding in kind, unleashed his magic power. Both of them wore exhilarated expressions. With Ma Dong-wook pressing forward and Baek Yoonho giving ground, it was clear they were enjoying this rare opportunity to cut loose, a luxury rank Psy hunters rarely had. Even so, if Mr. Baek Yoonho were to fight seriously, Ma Dong-wook wouldn't stand a chance. A voice broke Jinwoo's observation. Choi Jung-in had walked up beside him. Jinwoo turned slightly, acknowledging him with a nod. Choi Jung-in returned the gesture before continuing. The man in the dobok is Ma Dong-wook of the Shining Star Guild. Ah, Jinwoo recognized the name. So this was the guild's master. He nodded and asked, if he's that strong, why is Master Baek holding back? He doesn't like revealing too much in front of an audience. When Chairman Baek fights seriously, he transforms into something monstrous. Jinwoo recalled those beast-like eyes he had seen at the Red Gate. So, it's not just his eyes that transform, huh? Top hunters were often rumored to have unique, almost supernatural abilities. In many ways, they weren't far removed from monsters themselves. Jinwoo smirked at the irony. A man who transforms into a beast and a man who summons beasts. He could only imagine how others viewed him, just as Baek Yoonho's transformation seemed bizarre to him. Perhaps his own abilities seemed just as unnatural to others. But that was all. Jinwoo turned back to the match, but his interest had already faded. Even without focusing, he could read every attack and counter like an open book. And then, Baek Yoonho abruptly halted. Both of them turned their gazes toward Jinwoo. Did I make it too obvious? For a moment he thought his boredom had been too easy to read. But then he noticed too many people were staring at him. No, not at him, behind him. Jinwoo turned his head. Goto Ryuji. The Japanese hunter stood still, his gaze sharp and unreadable. The interpreter beside him stepped forward. Jinwoo had sensed Goto nearby, but he hadn't expected the man to address him. His eyes narrowed slightly. I had a bad feeling about this guy from the start, and now. Goto Ryuji finally spoke with a smirk. Will you have a sparring match with me? There was no hidden agenda behind Goto Ryuji's actions. He had come to South Korea with a clear purpose to personally assess the strength of the country's top hunters. But now, his interest had been piqued by someone truly unusual. I'll find out soon enough whether he's really a mage or not. No matter what the record stated, Goto Ryuji simply couldn't accept that the man standing before him wasn't a melee-type hunter. His instincts told him otherwise. To account for any unforeseen variables, he had to gather more information on Seong Jinwoo, while half of it is just for fun. A smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. The interpreter listened to Goto Ryuji's request. Mr. Goto. The interpreter hesitated, but Goto Ryuji simply smiled, his tone laced with amusement. Is there a problem? His voice carried an unspoken challenge. After a brief moment of hesitation, the interpreter spoke. Mr. Goto is asking if you'd be willing to train with him. There was no need for further clarification. Everyone in the room understood what that training really meant. Jinwoo knew that a world-renowned hunter like Goto Ryuji wouldn't challenge him just to show off. If that were the case, he would have chosen Choi Jung-in or Baek Yoonho, the leaders of South Korea's two strongest guilds. Yet rather than feeling annoyed by the sudden challenge, Jinwoo found himself intrigued. This was an opportunity, a chance to test the strength he had honed inside the demon's castle. Goto Ryuji's smile faded, replaced by a thin frown. He's smiling? He had expected Jinwoo to hesitate, maybe even try to back out. Instead, the Korean hunter remained completely at ease, exuding a quiet confidence. Was he certain of his own strength? Or was that smile simply a sign of mild annoyance at the unexpected challenge? The answer came soon enough. Jinwoo spoke to the interpreter, and the man's reaction was immediate. Goto Ryuji's patience was wearing thin. Just as he was about to snap, the interpreter finally spoke, his voice uneasy as he continued to steal glances at Jinwoo. Excuse me, Mr. Goto. Seong Jinwoo Hunter Nim has agreed to your proposal. However, he has a condition. A condition? He says he'll only agree if Mr. Goto gives it his all. Goto Ryuji's eyes snapped to Jinwoo. Is he serious? One glance at Jinwoo's expression was enough to confirm it. There was no trace of humor. Goto Ryuji tilted his head, his curiosity growing. Wait, this might actually be fun. Goto Ryuji's smirk disappeared. Initially, he had planned to gauge Jinwoo's skills at a controlled pace, but now he was willing to entertain this unexpected turn of events. Besides, with an S-rank healer nearby, there was no real risk of things getting out of hand. All right, I accept. The murmurs of the surrounding hunters grew louder. Who's that guy next to the Japanese hunter? Isn't that Seong Jinwoo? Wait, are they about to spar? Soon, the rank S hunters and association employees in the gymnasium had all gathered, their eyes locked on the two men standing off against each other. Amidst the growing tension, Chada Haiying stood quietly among the hunters, observing the scene unfold. Will he be okay? Jinwoo's opponent was none other than Goto Ryuji, Japan's top hunter, a man who stood at the pinnacle of a nation boasting over 20 rank S hunters. Jinwoo, on the other hand, had only just been promoted to S rank. If one ignored the years he spent as a rank E, he was practically a rookie. As a member of the Hunters Guild, Cha Haiyin saw Jinwoo as more than just another hunter. He was the man who had saved her guild's elite team, her comrades, people she had fought alongside for years. She wasn't the kind of person who could stand by and watch her benefactor get hurt. And yet she hesitated, because every time she considered stepping forward, she found herself recalling that day. That moment in the A-rank dungeon, when he faced over 100 high orcs and their boss alone. The way he had turned to her, his expression unwavering, his eyes firm, silently telling her not to interfere. A quiet, almost irrational anticipation welled up within her, making it impossible to move. Instead, she bit her lip, her fingers curling into fists. Meanwhile, Goto Ryuji made the first move, raising his fist. The nearby interpreter, sensing what was about to unfold, wasted no time retreating to a safe distance. Two ranks hunters were about to clash, and this wasn't just any fight. One of them was Japan's strongest. Only after ensuring the interpreter had fled did Jinwoo finally raise his hands. Or at least, that's what he tried to do. Swish! A fist cut through the air where Jinwoo's head had been a fraction of a second earlier. Goto Ryuji's eyes widened. I missed? His attack was meant to end things in a single blow, a decisive strike to reclaim his bruised pride. But now, that pride lay in tatters. Jinwoo had effortlessly dodged, tilting his head just enough to evade, then fluidly repositioned himself at a distance. His reaction speed was astounding. And he still calls himself a mage? A bitter laugh nearly escaped Goto's lips. What a joke. No, his eyes weren't mistaken. The Korean Association might have kept Jinwoo's true abilities a secret, but there was no fooling him. Soon Jinwoo was no mage. He was a melee fighter, an assassin through and through. For the first time in a long while, Goto Ryuji felt genuinely excited. Meanwhile, Jinwoo, having put some distance between them, listened to his heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. Indeed, it was beating faster. Yet the overwhelming emotion in Jinwoo's chest wasn't fear. It was conviction. So this is Japan's strongest hunter. Only now did he truly grasp how much he had changed. His confidence showed in his expression, and across from him, Goto Ryuji's face darkened. He's smiling? Again? How dare he? An overwhelming surge of magical energy erupted from him, pressing down on the gymnasium like an invisible force. The watching hunters flinched in shock. A storm was about to break loose. But Jinwoo? He just smiled. This was exactly what he wanted. Goto Ryuji's brow twitched. Even after unleashing his fearsome aura, Jinwoo showed no signs of backing down. Something stirred deep within him. A dangerous gleam flashed in Goto's eyes. No, there was no time to hesitate. His attacks rained down like a relentless storm. Fists, elbows, sweeps, each blow fast and lethal. But not a single one found its mark. Jinwoo moved like a ghost, dodging by the slimmest of margins, deflecting each strike as if he had seen them coming before they even left Goto's body. How is this possible? Cold sweat beaded on Goto Ryuji's forehead. From the outside, it looked as if Jinwoo was barely managing to keep up. But in reality, he was dictating the pace, forcing Goto to keep attacking, drawing out more and more of his strength. Cha Haiyin standing silently among them, and suddenly a new realization struck her. The reason they needed to stop this fight, it wasn't because Jinwoo was in danger. It was because Goto Ryuji was. Cha Haiyin turned to Baek Yoonho, expecting him to call for an end to the match. But he was trembling. Jinwoo was no longer the same man he had met in front of the association building. His power had grown, no, exploded. But swish! Goto Ryuji's outstretched hand sliced through the air, aimed straight at Jinwoo's eye. A fraction of a second, Jinwoo's body tilted instinctively. The attack missed, grazing his cheek instead. A shallow cut. But it wasn't about the wound. That attack, it was meant to kill. This was no longer a spar. The atmosphere shifted. A heavy silence swallowed the room. Then, Jinwoo clenched his jaw, and the air cracked with tension. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. A single thought echoed in every watching hunter's mind. Baek Yoonho couldn't stop it. The frightened gasp that escaped his lips. A breath caught in Goto Ryuji's throat. Why? Why did he suddenly think of death? Why did he feel like his existence could be erased at this very moment? Then, stop! Baek Yoonho and Cha Hae-in lunged. Neither thought, they acted. Baek Yoonho wrapped his arms around Jinwoo's shoulder, dragging it down with all his weight. Cha Hae-in gripped his wrist with everything she had. They didn't care about their own safety. They just had to stop him. The Japanese hunter stumbled back, clutching his arm, his breath shallow and erratic. He didn't say a word, didn't dare. The interpreter rushed to his side, panic flashing in his eyes. Baek Yoonho spoke quickly. Let's stop the spar here, tell the Japanese. The moods turned too tense. Goto Ryuji's gaze burned into Jinwoo, lingering. Then, without a word, he spun on his heel and strode out of the gym. Mr. Goto! The interpreter chased after him, his voice pitiful, weak. Baek Yoonho exhaled sharply, turning to Jinwoo. Forgive us for interfering. Jinwoo responded without hesitation. No, not at all. Baek Yoonho was correct. If anything were to happen to Goto Ryuji, causing unforeseen complications in the operation, both countries could face serious consequences. As such, Jinwoo harbored no resentment towards Baek Yoonho or Cha Hae-in for their timely intervention. Now that the tension had eased, spectators who had been watching the sparring match between Jinwoo and Goto Ryuji eagerly approached him. The first to step forward was Ma Dong-wook, the towering master of the Shining Star Guild. He let out a hearty laugh, to walk away with nothing but a scratch after facing Goto Ryuji. Truly remarkable young man. With genuine appreciation, he placed a firm hand on Jinwoo's shoulder. My guild is composed mainly of mage-type hunters, so we're lacking in melee fighters. If you haven't chosen a guild yet, how about joining mine? Before Jinwoo could respond, a new voice interrupted. Choi Jong-in, who had been observing the exchange, took a step forward. Excuse me, Master Ma. Choi Jong-in delivered a statement that sent shockwaves through the room. Hunter Song Jinwoo is actually a mage-type hunter. Ma Dong-wook's eyes widened in disbelief. What? Meanwhile, away from the gymnasium, Goto Ryuji had distanced himself from his interpreter and examined his wrist. A deep bruise had formed. Despite the moderate temperature, beads of cold sweat formed on his forehead. He swiftly retrieved his phone and dialed a familiar number. After a few rings, the line connected. Matsumoto speaking. Association President. Goto? What's the matter? Your voice sounds off. Goto Ryuji took a steadying breath. There's an extraordinary hunter in South Korea. More powerful than you? Most likely, sir. A silence hung between them before Matsumoto finally responded. Goto Ryuji hesitated before pressing on. His name is Seong Jinwoo. He's a reawakened hunter, recently evaluated as an S rank. Matsumoto Shigeo remained quiet for a moment, then rustled through some documents. That's odd. There's no such name on record. We recently received the finalized list of Korean hunters participating in the upcoming operation. Goto's grip on the phone tightened. Are you saying Song Jinwoo isn't on the list? Exactly. The confirmed participants are Choi Jong-in, Ma Dong-wook, Baek Yoonho, Cha Hae-in, Imtaeq, and Min Byung-ji-yu. These 6 will depart for the raid in 4 days. Back in the gymnasium, Baek Yoonho took a deep breath. Even though the sparring match had ended, his heart was still racing. He had witnessed something astonishing, but never expected to see firsthand. An awakened hunter who can continue to grow stronger. The sheer potential of such an individual was unfathomable. Unlike the others vying to recruit Jinwoo into their guilds, Baek Yoonho remained silent, deep in thought. If I were in his position, I wouldn't even consider joining a guild. Indeed, any recruitment attempts would be futile. But forming a connection with such a powerful hunter didn't necessarily require recruitment. Time for Plan B. Just then, his phone buzzed with a new message, a notification from the association. He casually opened it, but as his eyes scanned the contents, he suddenly shot up from the wooden bench. Hunter Seong Jinwoo isn't on the list? The mass media erupted in a frenzy. To eliminate the monstrous creatures that turned Jeju Island into a desolate wasteland, South Korea and Japan unite to form a joint raid team. No other news could have captivated the public more than this. Television channels broadcasted updates on the impending raid around the clock, while newspapers prominently featured the united operation on their front pages. Meanwhile, for Song Jinwoo, these past few days had been the happiest since his mother was hospitalized. Life had changed in many ways. First and foremost, the Seong family finally returned home after his mother's discharge. Clank. As Jinwoo pushed open the front door, he was greeted by the sight of their apartment's disarray, the direct result of Jinyi, while he had been preoccupied within the demon's castle. Without a word, he reached over and pinched his sister's cheeks. With a gentle laugh, their mother intervened, attempting to stop him. One of the first things Park Young-hae did after returning home from her 4-year coma was to clean the house. Jinwoo tried to dissuade her, but her insistence won out. Eventually, the entire family rolled up their sleeves and worked together to restore their home to order. Once the apartment was spotless, an unfamiliar warmth filled the space. The home that had felt empty and lonely for so long was now brimming with life once more. On television, an expert elaborated on the evolving threat. The rate of evolution displayed by these ant monsters is astonishing. A guest seated beside him feigned shock. Evolution? Wasn't the ant discovered in Japan a lone mutated specimen? That's correct. However, when mutations propagate and take control of an entire horde, we classify that as evolution. The footage showcased the ant monsters during the first and second subjugation attempts. At first, they were indistinguishable from regular ants, scuttling across the ground on 6 legs. Their appearance was akin to that of oversized, grotesquely enlarged insects. But then, the creatures had undergone a dramatic transformation. No longer crawling, they now walked upright on 2 legs like humans. In just 2 years, the species had undergone a radical metamorphosis, evolving into an entirely new form of monstrosity. The online discourse surrounding Song Jinwoo had reached an all-time high, with anonymous commenters unleashing their unsolicited opinions. Your disposition won't change just because you become an S rank, you know. Once an E rank, always an E rank. Probably ran off to hide, nearly wetting his pants in the process. The barrage of uninformed criticism didn't particularly bother Jinwoo. He had never been one to care about the opinions of faceless netizens. His mother rarely used the internet, so there was no concern on that front. His phone rang again. Checking the caller ID, a grin spread across his face. "It's me, Yoonho. I found an office space for us. Would you like to come check it out?" Jinwoo raised an eyebrow. "What office?" Yoonho's voice was brimming with enthusiasm. "Our guild office, of course. If we're going to establish a guild, we need an office, at the very least." This kid. It was clear that Yoonho was fully invested in the vision of developing their guild into something that could rival Korea's top 5 guilds, like the Hunters and White Tiger. Now that he was standing inside the office space, Jinwoo understood why Yoonho had sounded so confident over the phone. He took a slow look around the empty space and nodded. "The location was excellent. I specifically chose a place close to your home, Hungnim. It was also clean and modern. I made sure to go for newly developed office spaces." Jinwoo could only stare in mild disbelief at how ambitious Yoonho was being. "I'll do my best to grow this guild so it surpasses the 5 major guilds someday, Hungnim." Just then, "Oh right," Yoonho suddenly remembered something. "Someone was looking for you." "Me?" "Yes." Jinwoo's curiosity piqued. If this person had reached out through Yoonho, they must have done their research. After all, our connection isn't exactly public knowledge. Who was it? "I'm not sure, Hungnim. They were a foreigner, though, and spoke English." Yoonho reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and retrieved a small note. "This person said he'll be staying in Korea until the 17th, so he'd really appreciate it if you gave him a call." Jinwoo took the memo. It listed a mobile phone number and a hotel room. The 17th, that's 3 days from now. An English-speaking foreigner, who could it be? He couldn't recall anyone who fit the bill. Then, suddenly, "Looks like I'll have to go home first." His expression hardened. "Huh?" Yoonho had been planning to treat his Hungnim to a nice meal. It had been a while since they'd eaten together. Jinwoo, however, was far too preoccupied to notice his dongsang's disappointment. "I'm heading out." Yoonho quickly masked his feelings, bowing as usual. "Okay." By the time he looked up, Jinwoo was already gone. Darkness had settled in the hidden alleyways of the city. Echun Ji-min, a college student, was on her way home. But her heart was pounding wildly. She tried to reason with herself. But just as she turned the corner, her breath caught. "You make a noise, I'll kill you." A kitchen knife gleamed in his hand, his lips curled into a sinister smile. The man lowered his white surgical mask, revealing a grin. The broken street lamp flickered above them. No one else was around. The alley had swallowed them whole. Meanwhile, a man surveyed his surroundings. Ending things here would be easy. No witnesses. That's what I love about this neighborhood. A twisted grin formed on his lips as he tightened his grip on the knife. With a swift motion, he thrust the blade toward Yoonji Min's midsection. The impact never came. They all met an unnatural resistance, as if striking solid steel. His hands trembled from the force of the failed attack. "Why do you do this?" the killer sneered. "You trying to fix me or something?" "No. Just wondering if you have a reason." The killer scoffed. "A reason, huh? Well, if I had to give one. Because it's fun." "Fun?" "Yeah. Something about seeing weaklings squirm just makes me pain." Blinding, searing pain shot through his leg. He collapsed with a scream, clutching his left ankle. His tendon had been severed. But when? He hadn't even seen the knife move. Jinwoo knelt beside him, calmly searching his pockets. He retrieved the killer's phone and wallet, inspecting their contents before dropping them back onto his trembling body. The killer wheezed, his face contorted with agony. "Who the hell are you?" "Surrender yourself to the police before midnight tomorrow." "What?" Jinwoo's hooded gaze bore down on him. "If you want to keep breathing." Jinwoo had said all he needed to. He rose to his feet and, with a subtle motion, embedded one of his shadow soldiers into the serial killer's shadow. Before leaving, he gave the same order to his hidden soldier. Though I'm not sure how patient a high orc shadow can be, waiting around might not be its strongest trait, but executing the next part of the command? That was well within a high orc's expertise. As he continued toward home, he suddenly looked up. The moon hung high in the midnight sky. It's already tomorrow. It was finally here. The Korea-Japan United Assault Team's raid. Even though Jinwoo wasn't part of the team, anticipation surged through him. If he felt this way just watching from the sidelines, what must the participating hunters be experiencing right now? He recalled the faces of those he knew among the raid members, silently hoping for their safety and their success. Inside the Japanese Hunters Association dojo, Goto Ryuji remained. As the dojo emptied, his thoughts lingered on that day. Sisang Jinwoo. What was he? Goto clenched his jaw. The more he thought about their encounter, the more bitter he felt. But he quickly shook his head. It doesn't matter now. Jinwoo wasn't participating in the raid. Meanwhile, from a different place, the rotors roared overhead, sending deafening vibrations through the air as the hunters boarded the helicopter. Silence. The always grinning Ma Dong-wook, the ever-confident Choi Jong-in, even Baek Yoonho, known for his positive nature, none of them spoke. Their usual expressions were gone, replaced by somber determination. The cameraman adjusted his equipment one last time. His camera was head-mounted, allowing him to move freely without obstruction. I have to say, I'm surprised that Association President Go Gun-hui actually allowed this raid to be filmed. He wouldn't approve something like this just for money. I think perhaps he wants to reassure the public. Even as he tried to steady his nerves, tension continued to build in his chest. He wasn't the only one. Even the ranks hunters felt the weight of the battle ahead. The silence grew heavier, until Baek Yoonho finally spoke, trying to break the tension. "Hey, Byung-ji-yu, I really didn't expect to see you here today." Min Byung-ji-yu grinned. "I figured if I wasn't here to heal you, Hung, you'd be the first one to die. You do tend to throw yourself at monsters after all." "What the hell? Since when have I thrown myself at them?" Laughter rippled through the helicopter. Min Byung-ji-yu, South Korea's only rank S healer. The fact that he had come out of retirement for this raid reassured everyone on board. A raid with a healer was completely different from one without. With him here, they could fight harder, worry less. As the tension in the air slowly eased, Cha Hae-ing turned to Baek Yoonho. "Chairman Baek, before coming here, did you speak to Mr. Seong Jinwoo?" "Seong Jinwoo?" He shook his head. "No, I didn't. Why do you ask?" "Ah, it's nothing. I must have been mistaken." Just then, Ma Dong-wook chuckled, his voice light but edged with anticipation. "Ha ha, looks like it's finally starting." The hunters followed his gaze. Through the helicopter's window, the dark silhouette of Jeju Island loomed ahead, a land of monsters. The mutated ants detected the helicopter's presence and immediately took to the air, one by one. "I'll handle them." Choi Jong-in, the team's sole mage-type hunter, stepped forward. With a flick of his wrist, he activated Flame Spear. 7 burning projectiles materialized in the air. Flames erupted upon impact. Killing an ant monster outright required more concentrated firepower, but destroying their wings? That was easy. Their shrieks filled the air as their charred wings disintegrated, leaving them to plummet helplessly back to the earth. Choi Jong-in clenched his fist, satisfied with his handiwork. But now wasn't the time to celebrate. He turned to Ma Dong-wook. "What about the Japanese side? The ants were moving now. Their presence had been detected. Ma Dongwook pressed a hand against his earpiece, listening intently. As the team's designated leader, he was responsible for their coordination. They've landed. Kaboom! A sudden explosion cut through the night. One after another, detonations rocked the island, thick smoke billowing into the sky. The Japanese team had engaged. The fourth subjugation operation had officially begun. And in the depths of that abyss, the Ant Queen awaited. This raid had one objective: eliminate her. The hunters huddled together. We have 1 hour. His voice was firm. That's how long the Japanese side can hold them off. No more. We must kill the queen before then. He didn't mention failure. There was no escape plan. If they failed, they would be trapped inside the ant tunnel with no way out. How long since the Koreans went in? Goto Ryuji's voice cut through the tense atmosphere. While it was Goto Ryuji's responsibility to communicate with Mission Control, he disliked carrying unnecessary equipment. Instead, another hunter handled the task. They say it's been less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes, huh? Goto Ryuji took a moment to survey the battlefield. Piles of ant corpses were stacked high, evidence of the massacre they had inflicted. On paper, the Japanese team's role in this raid was simple: draw the ants' attention. Yet the devastation they had caused was undeniable. The Koreans might struggle against these creatures, but to us, they're nothing. A smirk crept onto his lips. As Jinwoo came to a stop after his usual daily run, a familiar mechanical beep echoed in his ears. Total distance ran 10 kilometers. You have completed running 10 kilometers. Unlike when he first started completing the daily quests, he wasn't even out of breath. And just as expected, the completion message was followed by his rewards. Stats. Out of the 3 bonus stat points he earned, he allocated 2 to agility and 1 to strength. With a satisfied grin, Jinwoo dismissed the stat window and looked around. His neighborhood had always been quiet, but today it was eerily empty. He could easily guess why. As expected, by now, the Korea-Japan joint raid would be in full swing. Every citizen would be glued to their television screens. So far, the operation was proceeding smoothly. Just as the Japanese had anticipated, Ma Dongwook's team encountered no resistance as they ventured deeper into the ant tunnel. The tunnel's interior was similar to cave-type dungeons, but one noticeable difference stood out: the absence of illuminating stones. Without them, the hunters had to generate their own light to navigate. The cameraman swallowed nervously. Positioned at the very back of the formation, he watched as the team moved in tight formation, with Choi Jung-in leading at the front, lighting the way with his magic. It's too quiet, Choi Jung-in muttered absent-mindedly. Ma Dongwook, walking beside him, nodded in agreement. From the depths of the dark tunnel, a chilling, skittering noise echoed hundreds, maybe thousands of tiny eggs scraping against the cave floor. Then, a shadow emerged from the blackness. No, not a single shadow. Many. A tide of ants, their gleaming black carapaces reflecting the dim magical light, swarmed forward. Their mandibles snapped open and shut, producing a sickening, chittering sound. The scent of decay and raw earth thickened in the air. Ma Dongwook gritted his teeth. They're coming faster than expected. He slammed his shield into the ground. We hold the line here, he commanded. The team shifted into position instantly. Choi Jong-in raised his hand. Flames flickered to life, crackling ominously. Bang Yoonho's muscles tensed as his transformation activated, his pupils narrowing into bestial slits. Min Byung-ji-yu stood ready at the back, his healing spells prepared. The first wave of ants lunged forward. Let's go, Ma Dongwook growled. The battle inside the ant tunnel had begun. Bang Yoonho's sharp gaze followed the direction of the cameraman's trembling finger. In the far corner of the nursery, half buried under the remains of shattered eggshells, was an enormous husk, easily 5 times the size of a normal ant egg. A chill ran down Baek Yoonho's spine. What the hell hatched from that? The moment he voiced his thoughts, an eerie silence settled over the hunters. Ma Dongwook narrowed his eyes, stepping forward cautiously. It's too big to be a normal soldier ant. The episode ends here. The next part is coming in just 3 days, so make sure to subscribe to Recap Manga for your best dose of manga and manhwa videos. Stay tuned.